in the back because he thought I wouldn't pick on him if he sat in the back. If you sit in the front, he gets picked on. But you know, that's not the way that's going to work. So this subject is introduction to podcasting. And somebody asked me before, well, you're not just going to talk about how to subscribe, right? You're going to talk about how to create one. And the one to create one was not accepted for the cruise. The one to tell you how to subscribe was accepted. But if you guys seem to be getting the hang of this and we get going quickly, I'm going to give you some information on how to create your own podcast if you guys want to go into that. If you don't, that's okay too. I think that's done. And I'm not using it.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
All right, so what is a podcast? How many people here already subscribe to podcasts? All right, so we'll go fast through this one, I guess. All right, but I wanted to do this one. So the main thing to know about a podcast, you know, you've got this ridiculous long description from Wikipedia that nobody's going to read. What it really is internet, radio, and TV is the way I like to think of it. But it's delivered to you, and that's the big distinction between normal video and audio on the internet. So to me, the great joy about podcasting is it's what you want, when you want, where you want it. So it's just completely all about you. And so if I love, you know, a Mac podcast, maybe somebody else likes a knitting podcast, somebody else likes a car podcast, somebody else likes a comedy podcast. We all get to have what we want. We don't have to be forced into anything we don't want to watch. So, you know, you can just find content on the web, right? You can go to a website, you can push play. You can go to YouTube and push play. But if you think about it, you could drive to, well, you used to be able to drive to bookstores. Imagine in the old days when you could drive to a bookstore and you could pick up a magazine. You had a Car and Driver magazine. You go over there and you drive and you go get it. You wait a couple of weeks and you go, I wonder if the new Car and Driver's out yet. You can drive back over and check and it's not there. Go over the next day, it's not there. Go over the next day, it's not there. Well, if you really want Car and Driver, why are you going to do that? Why don't you just have it delivered to you? And that's exactly what podcasting is. So one thing that I really want to stress to you guys, if you subscribe to podcasts, I want you to promise that you will stop feeling guilty when you haven't listened to an episode. Yes. All the time. Oh, you know, I'm sorry, I'm really far behind. Well, throw them away then. Who cares? Move on to the next one. You know, I like a lot of Leo's podcasts, but they do go on. So, but my solution to that is not to feel guilty that I haven't gotten it done. I just listen until the next one comes out, and then I throw it away. I mean, if it's really, really good and I'm just crazy about the host, I might finish watching, but only because I want to, not because I ever feel guilty. So this is not like magazines. Don't feel guilty about that big stack of magazines sitting there. Just throw them away. You know, if, most shows you can go back and get them later if you really thought, I really wanted that August '62 version of her show.
They're like soapers, though. You can hear one, not hear them for a few months, and then
nothing's changed. Exactly. And you know, there's some shows you watch, you listen to or watch every single day, come out and you're all excited, and some you just kind of they're the filler in between. You know, one big distinction is that a podcast is not a single thing. So as a book is to a magazine, online audio or online video is to a podcast. So a podcast by definition has extra episodes. It isn't just one. There is a problem in podcasting called pod fading. And right around 4 to 6 podcasts in, many podcasters just stop. They go, wow, I had no idea how much work this was, or I wasn't as interesting as I thought I was. Now in my case, I'm at 392 episodes as of this week, so I'm never shutting up. Yeah, you can pretty much count on it. I'm also, one other thing is that podcasting is whenever somebody feels like doing it was what came out at the beginning, was you just do it whenever. I do have podcasts that I listen to that are randomly, they just show up in my feed after, you know, a couple months. Oh, there's 3 episodes in a row, and then 2 months will go by. I think people have kind of gotten more into a rhythm, though, the ones that are continuing, and mine is like clockwork, comes out on Sunday night. Almost worst case, it'll come out a day early, but it's very, very rarely late. In fact, while I was gone, I had someone else do my podcast so that it wouldn't be gone. So a lot of people get confused by the word subscribe and they think, does it cost money? No, podcasts are free with one single category exception. I mean, it's only because Don's in the room I'm going to say this, but you really shouldn't expect to pay for comedy or news or entertainment. Those things are all free. But the one thing that is worth paying for is good instruction, is learning. And so Don's Screencast Online is the one thing I would pay for. He's got Mac and iOS tutorials, and I know he would never do this, so now he's all embarrassed, his face is red and everything. But he's got, I mean, I'm telling you, most of what I know I learned from Don. So you probably don't even need me up here, but anyway, they let me be up here. So in general, though, everything you're going to look for, if you find a podcast, the answer is going to be free. It's almost always free. So a quick little history lesson on how this works, and this will kind of get important into, if we do have time to go into how they're made. The original thing that existed out there was called really simple syndication, RSS. And RSS is the delivery mechanism that allows you to get it delivered to you through an RSS reader, so Google Reader or one of those kinds of things. So that's usually just text. But the Podfather Podcasting, Adam Curry, figured out that you could add an attachment to an RSS feed. When that happened, that's when they realized you could deliver audio, video, text documents, PDFs, whatever you want to people. I cited down on the bottom here, a guy named Nightwise does what he calls DocuCast, or he'll have what he calls his media feed. So one week you get a video podcast. One week you might get story time where he tells technology stories. He's got documents where he creates PDF tutorials teaching how to do something. So, and he's all over the map. You never know what you're going to get with him. He's absolutely hilarious, great podcast. So you can have any kind of attachment you want, really. So what are podcasts about? Anything you want, there is a podcast about. I am not joking. There were 6 knitting podcasts within the first 6 months of podcasting starting. So there's, I mean, you know, comedy, cars, science fiction, art, business, you know, absolutely anything you want. Pick a topic, left-handed screwdrivers, there will be a podcast about it. I don't know if it's a real good one, but be there. The next question would be, how do you subscribe? So I'm going to walk you through a couple of different things. On iTunes, on the Mac, iTunes is really the only game in town. There used to be other players. There's one called Miro, but it's just dodgy and it's full of ads now. It used to be really good. It was free, but it's like so ad-ridden I couldn't even figure out how to demonstrate it for you. On iOS, there's a bunch of different options. Apple has a podcast app, which most people say is not that good. But I'm going to walk you through and show you what it is. It's a free app, so it's there. You can try it out if you like. Downcast is my personal favorite, and so you'll see a huge bias on why I think it's wonderful. Instacast is another favorite of other people. I found a couple things I didn't like about it, so I'm sticking with Downcast. There are also dedicated podcast app, and I'm going to demonstrate, show you my podcast app, why you might want to look at a dedicated podcast app. Not for everybody, but there's reasons you might want to do that. So when you're going around on the web, there is no standard format for what subscribe to a podcast looks like. On my website, I've got an iTunes logo, and it says subscribe to podcast. On Nightwise, he's just got a button called subscribe, but he's an Android, Linux, Mac, Apple, you know, crazy person. Over here on Twit, it just says subscribe to audio, subscribe to video. That will take you to a page that will allow you to subscribe in iTunes or subscribe with another tool. So there really is no standard logo. You're just going to have to wing it and see if you find something that says subscribe. Some sites make it really hard to find the subscribe button. All right. The process for subscribing to a podcast on iTunes is find us a podcast, subscribe to the podcast, open it in iTunes, and then the most recent episodes will download automatically, and then you plug in your iPod. But since I can't demonstrate any of this stuff because we don't have a decent internet connection, I made a little video. Not as good as Don's, I'm sure. But.
Without an internet connection on the ship, it's pretty difficult to actually demonstrate how to subscribe to a podcast. One of the ways to subscribe to a podcast is to go to the website for the podcaster and look for the iTunes logo or some other thing that says subscribe. In my case, I use the iTunes logo. So I'm going to click on subscribe. It's going to open a link to apple.com, itunes.apple.com, and give me the option to view in iTunes. You notice it says right here that it's free and the category is software how-to. Now that's going to launch iTunes. Let's get that out of the way. So now in iTunes, in the store, and again, even though it's free, it's still going to say it's the store. It's going to show me the logo and some of the episodes, and I'm pretty sure you can play these right from there. And I can also subscribe. Now you notice I already said subscribe once, but I'm going to go ahead and say subscribe again. And now you're going to see a download for the podcast. If I click on downloads, you can see it coming in right here. I should mention that you might get another pop-up that says, are you sure you want to subscribe? But I always get rid of that and check the box that says, please don't annoy me again. I can stop the podcast from here, or I can actually pause the podcast. If I have a lot of different episodes coming in and maybe I'm really waiting for this one particular show before I run out the door, I might want to actually just grab that podcast first. Okay, now we can see that the download is completed. We'll look in podcasts, and you can see my lovely album artwork and the most recent episode under this little tick mark. You'll also notice that you can get previous episodes. It's up to the podcaster how many they want to show back. I show about a year's worth, which is kind of a lot, but I used to show all 7.5 years worth, so consider yourself lucky that's all I give you. But let me show how easy they are to get rid of. I can grab the first one, grab all the way to the bottom one with a shift select, and I just hit my delete key, and it's going to say, are you sure you want to delete those podcasts? Now, only the most recent episode is there. Since they weren't really downloads, they were just pointers to the other episodes. So now I'm going to plug in an iPod. Now, I've actually plugged in a very old Nano. This is my husband Steve's Nano from a very, very long time ago. And I'm going to show you that when you look at the iPod in the left sidebar, you're going to see a series of buttons up here that you can choose from, different tabs. One of them is Podcasts. So now you have a choice to sync podcasts, and it's going to say, are you sure? Yeah, I know, this is a highly dangerous maneuver. We better be certain we want to do that. I'm going to click Sync Podcast. And now I'm going to make a couple of choices here. I can automatically include, say, the 3 most recent episodes, or a whole bunch of different options here. If you have a lot of podcasts, you may not want to sync them all over to your iPod if you have a small one, or iPad if you have a small one. In this case, I think I'm pretty safe, so I've just got the one. So I'm going to say apply, and it's going to sync this now over to the Nano. And you can see it's syncing the podcast, and it still says it's syncing, and it's finished. I'm going to hit down here on podcasts. I'm going to look here, so you can see the most recent episode of the NosillaCast has been synced to this iPod. Now you can eject it and run along your merry way.
All right. So that didn't show you how to do it in searching, but we'll keep going here. So the next thing you can do is the iOS apps. So this is Apple's podcast app for iOS, and it's completely free. So that's pretty much its most redeeming feature, I think. You know how nice Don is. When he did his review, did a show on this, he walked through the whole thing and he said, well, you know, we could have done a little better. You know, he gave it just enough of that. I just realized I'm not on the mic. Is that a problem? You all right? I'm bellowing it out there? All right, so with the Apple Podcast app, you can peruse the featured podcast is the first tab down here, and you can also filter it by categories and filter by audio versus video. They also have a section called the top charts, and I tried to figure out exactly what this was. It was the top 10 episodes and the top 10 podcasts, so not necessarily the same thing. It's based on a combination of recent subscriptions, podcast reviews, downloads, that sort of thing. iTunes reviews are very, very important to podcasters. If you like a podcaster, go push the 5-star on there. If you hate them, go push the 1-star. But it matters a lot because it helps you be able to find good content if other people have done this. So it's kind of good to do that for other people too. And it helps podcasters get discovered if you go in and give them the +5 stars. That really does help. You can search in the podcast app if you already know what you're looking for. So here I searched in the podcast app for NosillaCast Mac Podcast, and it found individual episodes that I could download one at a time, or it found the actual podcast there. Over here, then I went in and I click on subscribe, and then it shows me all of the most recent episodes. But I could download individual ones, which is kind of nice. When you're on an iOS device, you don't want to fill it up with a lot of crap, so it's kind of good to have this be a little more limited. You can actually, if you scroll down, you can actually see the number of reviews, and you can see people writing the reviews. Of course, I think I sorted by the people who liked them, but just so it looked like that. It's 5 stars. But if you scroll down, you can actually read the reviews to see whether or not that's a podcast you want to listen to. By the way, interrupt with questions as always. You can subscribe. One of the nice things about the podcast app is you can change the way you subscribe to individual podcasts. So you can have the subscription on, but you can turn auto download off so that you just go get it when you want to get it. So again, to not fill your iPod up or your iPhone or your iPad up, you might want to set that up. And they've got ways to sort the podcast and to play the podcast in there too.
Allison?
Yeah.
Can you delete from your iPod?
Yes.
Podcast?
Yeah, I think in most of these, I'm not positive if it's in this one, but I think if you just do the swipe left or right to delete episodes, you can do that. And individual podcasts. Yeah, Pat says I'm not lying. So one of the things you got to love about podcasting sort of thing is you want to be able to share it, right? Oh, I just heard the most amazing episode of NosillaCast. Well, if you click on share down here, you can send out a tweet to say this was the best podcast episode ever. But it sends this really dorky URL. That's the URL it sends on my podcast. This is the actual feed file for the text file that controls my RSS feed. Well, that's not really very good. I think that's kind of lame. Some of them give the actual name, or they'll give some of the apps give the name or the real content. Within here, you can see this is the description section of the podcast that I create, which is a separate piece from the show notes, but it kind of gives you the top level idea of what was talked about in that episode. All right, let's talk about the one I really like. Downcast is vastly superior, but it will knock you back $2. So, you know, at least it's universal, so it's not too bad. You can add podcasts manually, which is a little bit tricky, but if you find one of those links you can that show where somebody said subscribe, you can copy that link and then paste it into here. It's a little bit dodgy, but sometimes you need to do that. You can do a search for podcasts, and there's a reason I'm showing this. It's because of what I don't like about Downcast. So I did a search for NosillaCast. The first thing that comes up is my podcast. The second one is a series I did called Podcasting on Podcasting. And I'll talk about that at the end, but that's where I teach how to do podcasting. I've been on Going Linux, Mac Crack, Mac Roundtable. I've been on all those podcasts. But the number one hit is my actual podcast, which is kind of what I would like it to find, right? In this, you also do control when in Downcast, you control when and how they're going to be downloaded. And one of the best features in here is you can set it to Wi-Fi only. So if you've got a limited 3G, 4G connection and you don't want to waste all of that bandwidth, you probably want them only downloading when you walk into the house or you're in a Wi-Fi range. That's probably the most important feature in the app for me. You can set a bunch of different options here, playback speed, and I'll get into that a little bit, but for some reason, there's crazy people out there that listen to me at 3x. I can't even listen to me at 2x. I don't know what these people are doing, but I have found they ask me a lot of questions. It's like, I already explained that in the show. Like, this one guy's been listening for 2 years. He asked me what my email address is. I say it in every episode, but he probably can't hear it because it goes by that text. But people love that. So when you start your downloads, like let's say I come home, I'm in Wi-Fi, I'll say start up the download queue. You can pause each of these. These are 4 different things I'm downloading at the same time. You can pause so that one gets in. If you're running out the door and you can't wait for the latest episode of NosillaCast, you might want to pause iPad today. So you can choose which one you're bringing down. It's a beautiful, beautiful app. So again, you don't have to fill it up with shows. You can actually just stream them. So let's say you do have a good 4G, 3G data plan. I don't know who does, but if somebody in here does. You can actually stream these on the road. You're just out in the car, out and about. You can just hit down to start playing. You can set it up to stream. So right here, you can see I can download it, mark for streaming, or stream now. And that's kind of nice, too. So when you're an emergency podcast need and you've run out of stuff on your iPhone, you can pull it up. All right, so alternative listening. Again, I don't think that anybody should listen to any podcast and skip anything in any of our shows. But let's say you're tired of hearing my ad. You can swipe on the screen to the right, and it'll skip 30 seconds. So, I think I counted 7 minutes of swipes on one of Leo's ads once. It was pretty funny. It was always interesting, but you can go really, really fast through these. You can rewind 15 seconds, which is nice. You can fast forward 30 seconds or 2 minutes, speed up to 3x. It even has a sleep timer, which I'm sure no one would use on my show, but I'm sure there's other shows that they might need that on. And when you do the social sharing on this one, when you hit the share button, it actually puts the episode title instead of, podfeed.com/NosillaCast/RSS.xml, which nobody wants to see. You can also use multiple devices with this. So if you've got an iPod and an iPad and an iPhone that you want to use it on, you can have them basically synced up through iCloud so they know where each other are. Now, if this worked on the iPod Nano, I'd be really, really happy because that's where I listen to shows and I bounce back and forth. But there are zillions more settings. Lock screen artwork, Callisto.fm, I don't even know what that is. Shake for media skip, you want a new podcast, just shake it, I guess. A whole bunch more options I don't even do. All right, so that's it for Downcast. Any questions on Downcast? The next one up is Instacast, $5 on the iPad and $2 on the iPhone. The other one, Downcast, was $2 on both, so it's got a winning point there. The default is to search by most popular podcasts, which I'm not sure that's the first thing you're going to do, but if you're looking for new shows, you might want to do that. There's a video tab, and I think that's by most popular. I'm not sure what the sort order is on that. They didn't really explain it, but there they are. Enhanced podcast. So if you've got an audio podcast, I think more often than not it's just a plain MP3. And MP3 is nice because everybody can play MP3, so all kinds of devices can play it. But there's a thing called an enhanced podcast. The format is AAC, which a lot of people think is a proprietary Apple format, but it is not. It's just it's a better audio compression format, but it supports the idea of having chapters. So if I really cared about you as an audience, I would create an AAC file, and every time I change subject, I would have a chapter marker, and you'd be able to skip the commercials really, really easily. I don't love you that much. That's way too much work. But if you do find, some people do it. I don't know if Adam Christensen still does it with the MacCast, but you can, and I know the Mac Geek app does it, yeah. And it's kind of nice because you get separate album artwork for each thing, and you can actually tap on the album artwork, and it'll take you to a URL, that kind of thing. It's too hard. I could do it, but I don't. Oh, and that they only work on iOS and on the Mac. They don't work on Windows or Android or anything like that. I think they work on Android. I haven't checked that lately. I should double check that. But who cares about them anyway? It's fun having audiences all of the same mind. This is really fun. And usually I have to be all politically correct and everything. Let's see. So podcasts have what's called metadata. They have information about the podcast buried in the file, in the RSS file. And one of the things they tell you is the genre. So you can actually search in Instacast by genre, and that gives you things like right here I'm in technology shows, software how-to, and that's where it came down. But if you'll notice, that's not the logo you've been looking at all these days. This is an old logo, and I have no idea why it's old in there. It's right in iTunes, it's right in Downcast. It's wrong when I do by genre, but when I switch to search by title, it's the right logo. So I don't like Instacast. Again, you can search by title, author, or description, which is nice. Except I don't understand the whole logo thing. I have no idea how that could have gotten messed up, because that logo is buried in my file. They've either got the right file or the wrong file. You can search by description here. Now I put my title, I put NosillaCast in there. You would think it would be in there somewhere. I've been on the Mac Roundtable, MacCast, Going Linux, so talking to it. I'm associated with all of these podcasts in some way, but it didn't find my podcast. So I thought that was kind of weird. Yeah, what's up with that, right? You can see why I love these guys. So you can subscribe by a URL, which is nice. Again, you can enter that long, annoying URL. But I can only subscribe in here. I can't choose one episode to stream or download, which gets back to the problem of filling up your iPad, or your iPad, I gotta say, or iPhone. So this is a screenshot of the separate paid-for extra $5 iPad version, and it's got this giant space over here. Well, what'd you make me pay $5 extra for it if you weren't going to make it tailored to that device? So I don't know. That kind of irritated me too. The main screen, you can tell I just get madder and madder as I'm testing this, because I'm starting to get madder as I go through. It's going to get worse. So once you're
Can it get worse?
Can we hit that button? Go ahead, 30 seconds.
Yeah, now you got to get my anger in here.
Don't throw them on the table.
As soon as I subscribed, it started to play the first episode automatically, and I couldn't get it to stop. So I was pushing buttons all over. I'm pushing here, pushing, I tapped, what's all the, I got AirPlay going on. And down in the bottom right, I did find a cool way to bring up the more recent episodes, so that was kind of a nice feature, but I was trying to figure out how to stop the podcast. I'm still trying to stop it, so I clicked on the universal share button. I mean, it's the one, which one was it? In the bottom left. Yeah, there's a universal share button right there. I clicked on that. None of this was share. Like, it wasn't tweet, it wasn't Facebook, so I didn't know what that was. But I did find some interesting options. Import, export to Dropbox. That's kind of exciting. Review on iTunes. That's good. Apparently I was going to have to follow vMedia on Twitter if I kept going. But I still can't figure out how to share the podcast from the share button. And of course the podcast's still playing. It's still playing. So it's not the universal sharing button at the top either. It turns out you have to tap on the episode icon down here. And the only options you get, this isn't to stop it from playing because it's still playing, but to tweet it, send the URL as email is your only two options. That's all you get. And it sends that annoying, really long here. That's exactly what you want. PCast, PCast:/www, I don't even know what that is. The rest of that's my podcast URL. So let's see, I finally found it. It turns out if you tap on the picture, if you tap on the icon, that's where you get your controls. So that at least I was able to finally get my own voice to stop. I think I muted it by that time because it was on my nerves. And it only goes up to 2x, so you can't get through my show as fast as you might want. All right,
And you
next up.
can always double click your home key and then just swipe to the right and call up your playback controls of your iOS.
Oh, that's an idea. Yeah, probably could have paused it in there.
Yeah.
But you think like stop,
Would be
pause
on
might be a
there.
button you might want to reveal a little more easily. So I said I'd talk a little bit about dedicated podcast apps. I have a dedicated app, and this isn't necessarily representative of all dedicated apps, but I just kind of want to give you a flavor of why you might want to look to see if there is one. There's extra features. This one is $2 on iOS. There's not a separate iPad version yet. There will be, and it won't cost you extra when it comes out. So I do my show is an audio-only podcast, comes out on Sunday nights, but I also do the show live on Sunday nights at 5 o'clock Pacific time. So when you go to the live show, you get a couple of things. You can see a live chat going by on screen. You can watch me on video, and you can watch GarageBand as I'm creating the show. So it is literally watching the sausage get made. It's a lot of fun. The chat room is a huge part of the show, but what do you do if you want to be in the live chat, but you're on the road? Well, Donald Burr of Otaku No Podcast wrote this for me, wrote this app because he just felt the need that we had to have this. It also allows, actually no, that's not true, I was going to say something. So anyway, this lets you connect to the live chat room. You can see we're chatting over here, and you can listen to the live stream at the same time. So if you hit connect, it connects you into an IRC server, which is actually a very, very old kind of technology that's been around forever, but it's a really easy way to chat. So this is going to let you be on the show and listen to what's going on live. The first thing you do when you go in there is you're going to need to go into settings and get yourself a username and password. If you don't already have one, there's let's see, where did it go? Oh, because I've already got a username and password. It's grayed out, but there's a sign up button right here that will take you over to Justin.tv, which is where the live chat is hosted. So you can connect in there, and then you can turn some settings on. And I just wanted to show this because there's a couple of fun things you can do. You can turn on live show reminders, so at 5 to 5 it'll go, hey, the show's going to be on, don't forget to rush over and pay attention. This is my favorite feature here. It's called Annoy Allison mode. I went through a period of time where, for no apparent reason, I never discovered the root cause. My Mac would just freeze up and die in the middle of the live show. Never found out what caused it. It happened 3 or 4 times, and I lost everything twice. So the audience got into the habit of every time I stop recording, they all yell save in the chat room. You'll just see save, 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 save. So Donald thought it'd be better if you could just have an automatic mode to just yell save at me. You can also modify what this says, so some really funny stuff comes out during the live show. You'll see odd things coming up repeatedly. All right. Within the episode tab, this lets you go back and see all of the previous episodes. You can actually read the show notes and listen at the same time. My show is pretty unusual. I have ridiculously extensive show notes, probably 5,000 words a week. I do the first half of the show is a lot of highly technical detail I'm going through, and I just can't remember everything by Sunday that I started thinking about I was going to talk about on Monday. So I script it, and a lot of that is read almost verbatim, but I write in my own voice. And I think it comes out pretty natural. It's just a little bit you might be able to tell I'm reading. Believe it or not, some people read while I talk. It's real funny. But they can click the links and go off and see the things I'm talking about, which is kind of nice. And there's a lot of photos and images and stuff like that in there, so that's kind of cool. Wow. You can text message Twitter and Facebook right from in there as well. So, oh good, I am going fast, so we get to do more fun stuff. This is good. So things to remember is podcasting is just a term for what you want, when you want, whatever you want. I mean, it's just completely all about you. You can be completely self-centered. If you go into iTunes, on the left-hand side, there's a podcast button, and then in the bottom right for usability, it's about the worst thing I've ever seen. The upper left is podcast, and the bottom right says podcast directory. Then you can start searching in iTunes for different things you're interested in and get to the categories and that kind of thing. But remember, it's delivered to you, which is one of the main features. All right. Any questions on the apps? Yeah.
So podcasting apps are only for certain shows, right?
Steve said podcasting apps are only for certain shows. Yeah. I know the Mac Geek app has an app. I'm not sure. Does Ken Ray? Yeah, I think Ken Ray has one too for Mac OS X. What's that?
Chuck has it.
Chuck Joyner has one for the Mac Jury and that sort of thing.
Twit has one.
Twit has one? Oh, I didn't know Twit had one. Okay. So I don't know exactly who has what in theirs, but it's just trying to give you a flavor of the kind of enhanced things that you might get from getting to have a podcast app dedicated to the show. Yeah.
So is Downcast, did I hear you right to say that it will sync your devices?
He's asking, does Downcast sync your devices?
So if you
Yeah,
listen
but
to half
it'll
of a
sync your,
podcast?
yeah, if you listen to half of an audio podcast on your iPad and then pick it up on your iPod, you've got it will know where they were. But it's not going to go to the Mac,
Right.
and it's not going to go to your iPod Nano, so it's only within your
On your
iOS
iOS.
devices. Right.
But that's the only client that will do that.
That's the only client I know of. I didn't find it in the other ones when I was fishing through all the menus. If anybody wants to correct me on that. All right, cool. So the miniature link farm of doom. Again, Donald Burrow, Taco No Podcast, wrote the app, so I got to keep giving him his chops. $2 for Downcast, $2 for Instacast. Unless you want on the iPad, it's $5, and $2 for the NosillaCast app. All right, let's have some fun now. I thought it might be fun to show you how easy it is to do a live show. Let's see. Does anybody know how to collapse the left side oh, there you go. Nope. All right, well, we'll do it from this. So I thought you might get a kick out of trying to follow the diagram of what I do every single Sunday night. Let's start with my Mac. So the MacBook Pro is my Mac. This is the second MacBook sitting in the same room. On the MacBook, I've got an application called Feeder, which is where I write my show notes, and I'm reading from that. I've got Colloquy, which is a third-party client for participating in the live chat. This is where I'm in the live chat, nothing it's getting broadcast out from there. I'm running GarageBand to actually create the recording. I'm using Wirecast Studio, which I'll explain over here for the video broadcast, and Audio Hijack Pro for the audio mixing. So that's all I'm running here. On the MacBook Pro, I've got a thing called an iMic that allows me to take line in, it's USB out to line in, and I'll show you where that fits in. This is a piece of hardware. So everything blue is hardware, everything green is software. And then out of display ports going to my cinema display, which has the iSight camera that's actually capturing my face. I've got a Blue Icicle hooked to which is an XLR to USB microphone connector that allows me to plug in my high LPR20 without a mixer. Now, most people use mixers. I tried. I got hiss on the line one day that I could never get rid of, and I just got rid of it. I stopped using it, and I just use this. So separately, again, I've got a MacBook, and that's running Colloquy for live chat. But its entire job is to broadcast the live chat into Justin.tv where you're going to go watch it. Now, okay, that's just the pieces of hardware. So, Wirecast Studio is what's going to mix the video to go to Justin.tv. So if you go to Justin.tv/NosillaCast at 5 p.m. on Friday night, Sunday night, I'll actually show you these visually, what they look like when you get them in. But I've got the MacBook set up as an IP camera. So this application, Wirecast Studio, lets you have IP cameras. So it looks at the IP address of the MacBook Pro. It's running this software called Desktop Presenter that creates the IP camera that sends the video of that chat into Wirecast Studio. Secondly, it's got the cinema display with the iSight sending video in, which is my lovely mug. I actually think I forgot one. Yeah.
No,
GarageBand. Where's
GarageBand.
GarageBand coming in?
But that's
but that's the audio. There should be a third line here. I'm missing a piece.
Yeah.
So GarageBand comes in too, and it's coming because, and I didn't write it down there, I'm also running Desktop Presenter here, and it brings it in here, the video of the third piece, which is GarageBand. So this is not as complicated as it should be. Okay. All right. Every Sunday night at 5 o'clock. All right, now, I got GarageBand and my high LPR20. I need to mix those two signals together because I don't use a mixer. I use an application called Audio Hijack Pro. So I turn on GarageBand and I turn on my mic, and then Audio Hijack Pro, I tell it, hijack the audio from that and send it to that iMic that was up here to line in. And then it turns around. I think I've got the arrows backward. I think it comes back in via USB. I'm not sure. Might go out through USB and back in through line in. It's a mystery to me. So Audio Hijack Pro takes the iMic output of these two signals, and it sends it in as line-in audio to Wirecast Studio. So now I've got my 3 video signals, 1 audio signal that's actually GarageBand and my microphone. But that was not enough. People said, well, what if I want to listen to the show, but I'm going to use your app, or the blind listeners can't use Justin.tv. because it's inaccessible to the blind to be able to hit the play button basically to listen. So they said, well, we need our own feed for just audio. So Stu Helm of the International Mac Podcast said, hey, I've got a server with a tool called, that's an IceCast server. Well, IceCast lets you broadcast audio. So I take that same iMic signal that's got GarageBand and the Heil PR20 microphone, I feed that into an application called NosillaCast, which then feeds into Stu's IceCast server over in England, comes up here as audio only into podfeed.com/live. So you can go to my webpage and you can just hit play and you can listen as it's going on. Or, now that turned out to be an essential piece to the podcast app when we got it in. Video and audio also goes, why is the arrow going that way? Oh, that's right, that's right. So it goes into, these now go from Wirecast Studio, we get the live chat, iSight, the microphone, GarageBand, all into justin.tv/NosillaCast, which is then fed through Flash and shows up on podfeed.com/live. Every week I do all of that. For free. For free. For free. Yes, I do that for free. Because I'm just that nuts. Yeah.
Do you sometimes have guests?
I don't have any live guests. I do my I do recordings. I have a lot of listener content. I have listeners who contribute reviews. And then I'm assembling those in GarageBand, and that's a lot of what you're watching. Some is me talking, some is me assembling, I'm adding music. I'm making mistakes, they're making fun of me. One of my favorite things about the live chat is half the time they're not even talking about what I'm talking about. And I'll see people say, is that annoying woman in the upper left corner still talking? It's really, really a fun group, so it's worth it. I get a lot out of it, and they actually have caught a lot of mistakes. I'll say the wrong month, the wrong year. A couple of times I started doing a review and they're like, you did that review 2 weeks ago. Really? That happens a lot. So let's see. Oh, I promised to show you what it looks like.
So,
yeah.
Allison, do you have to sort of do some sort of strange brain training then to follow the live cast while you're talking?
Do I have to do a strange?
I don't know all this verbatim stuff that you read. How do you do this?
How do I keep track of the live chat while I'm doing this? Yeah. It's just like anything else. There really isn't any such thing as multitasking. I do one and then I do the other, and I do one and then I do the other. So while I'm recording something, I won't be watching the live chat at all. So that's not happening. Now, Colloquy has a nice feature that if you're sent a private chat, it actually pops up on screen and notifies you. So if I've just sent something stupid, the live chat will point it out, and Steve will send me a private chat that pops up on my screen and says, hey, you already recorded this 2 weeks ago, that kind of thing. So mostly it's a 1-0. I'm doing one or the other. I'm switching back and forth. But if I'm playing a recording, like let's say George from Tulsa is doing a recording, and George is in the live chat, I'll let the audience listen to the entire thing, because that way George gets to hear everybody saying, yay, great job, George, that kind of thing. If it's somebody who's not in the live chat, I'll usually tease it a little bit, and then I'll jump and say, yeah, you guys got to wait until Monday like everybody else to hear that. I don't know. These people listen and they go live. They're crazy people. They named themselves the NosillaCastaways. That wasn't me. That was their idea. That's their little club. So here's a couple of the screens. So when I talked about Desktop Presenter, that allows me to send the IP camera from the second MacBook and to send my display of GarageBand over to the both into Wirecast Studio. So when I launch that on each device, so this is on my Mac, I choose a source of window, the application, I tell it GarageBand, and then that's the window within GarageBand that I'm running. And I get real unclear on whether to capture audio or not. The audio part is still a little mystery to me. Sometimes I get an echo, I've got two sources, and sometimes I have none, and then I click buttons until it comes back. I keep claiming I'm gonna document that when I figured it out. So yeah, this was one of my little notes going, if you turn audio off here, nobody can hear you, but I think I found where to turn it on recently. This is Wirecast Studio. I think I need to scroll up a little bit here. So this is the app that pulls together all the pieces as I'm going through it. So this is the iSight camera that's getting piped in. This is the IP from Desktop Presenter of GarageBand. And this is the live chat coming from the IP camera from the secondary Mac. And then this is another layer that I throw a logo on top so that nobody can read the time, I guess, is the purpose for that. Within each of the screen below this, so I've got this up on screen too. I don't know if I mentioned that. I've got this up on screen. So I've got this this layout that I've created I call 3-Up that has identified exactly how this is laid out. And I've got a later screenshot that shows that. This is where, remember I said sometimes I get double. If this is on and the other one's on, I get double, but sometimes I only get one. I don't know. Like I said, it's kind of a mystery to me. there's a lot of moving pieces, as you can tell. So if I double click on this 3-up thing, or single click I think, this is where I set up the layers. So this is my display eyesight, this is desktop presenter from my machine, and this is from my son's Mac that's running the third IP source for the live chat going on. And there's all these other pieces, and these seem to disappear on me sometimes. Sometimes they have a big red question mark and I can't figure out why, and I have to add them again, which is always fun to have go on live.
How does the text get entered in there?
How does the text get entered in here? So this is people sitting on their separate computers using an IRC client, or on the website, on Justin.tv, you can sit there and type directly from there. They're typing, they're logging in. So like Zcard here, this is Alistair, Z-K-A-R-Z, or anyway. He's a guy from New Zealand, and he is sitting there typing on his Mac, and it's coming out, and this is Mark Shepard and Summer, who's blind.
But you're not answering him on that.
I am, well, this is the screen of how it's set up. It's not really live.
Okay.
The live one is really up there. But what I'm looking at is I'm just looking at a little window that's just got the chat going by that's not really connected to this. Except I'm just like any other user. I'm not even a moderator or anything like that. Steve is the moderator of the chat room. I can also animate, like if I want to switch screens, like let's say I wanted to show GarageBand full screen, because I'm going, I have this, there's a thing you can turn on to do ringtones. And it puts a little yellow bar up here that's 2 minutes long, because that's how long you can make a ringtone. And I cannot figure out how I accidentally trigger it sometimes. So I'll bring it up full screen. I go, okay, guys, where was it again? Because I can't remember how it gets it. It's like the letter H or something accidentally does it. So I think I'm chatting. I'm in the chat room, and I hit the H, and all of a sudden this thing comes up, and I can never remember how to get it back. So when I switch, I can have little animations like page curls. It's all cool and stuff. They love that stuff, you know. Is this fun?
Yes.
Not like you'll ever want to do it, but maybe it shows you why to be terrified. And this has nothing to do with creating a podcast, but I think it's cool. So this is Audio Hijack Pro. So I explained Audio Hijack Pro allows me to hijack the audio. This is pretty inexpensive software. I'm trying to remember how much it was. 40, 80 bucks, something like that. Not too much considering I'm not having to use a mixer for it. So I launch GarageBand, and I click on it in the left sidebar, and I hit hijack. And then if I click on this editor button right here in the auxiliary device that had to be set up, I set the device here to the iMic USB audio system. So that's saying where to send that output. So remember I had the diagram, I had the two things going together into Audio Hijack Pro and then spitting it out through the iMic. That's where I set that up. I do the same thing, I click on Blue Icicle, which is the name of that adapter for my mic, and I say hijack, and I tell it to output to the iMac. I think I have another diagram on that.
You're outputting to a mic?
No, I'm sorry. Well, I'm outputting to the device called an iMic. It's not really a microphone. It's an analog to digital converter is what it is.
Got it.
So here I've clicked on the Blue Icicle, I've clicked on the editor, I've said to set it to the iMic USB, and then I set it to hijack that. And I can see these audio things moving. I can see the way the indicators moving if I've successfully piped it to the right place. Half the time it doesn't work anyway, and I got to go figure out what I did wrong. So that's fun. This is NosillaCast. This is the, I actually made this for myself, but I thought it'd be fun to show. So this is NosillaCast, which allows me to create the audio-only feed that has nothing to do with the video, has nothing to do with Justin.tv. The only thing is it's got the, it goes into the dedicated app, which you can do the chat in. So here again, I'm going to say built-in input line in, because remember it was going from the iMac, it was going into USB, and it was turning around and going back out through line in. This is the line in that we had the output up there. It's got to be the input for here. And then there's actually server stuff that I have to set up here that says to go use that server in England owned by Stu Helm, who's a saint, by the way. He's helped me with a lot of this stuff. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's all the pieces. So it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. You can see that that timing-wise, it really is a challenge to keep all of this thing going. And I remember one time I'm juggling all this stuff, and I missaid something, and this kid wrote in the chat room, he wrote, "fail." Oh my God. And I wrote back to him and I said, he was in the orchestra, and I said, okay, you're playing the piccolo part to Vivaldi, and you got 8 million notes, and you're playing along, and you miss one. Somebody goes, fail, in your error. How'd that work out for you? He never came back, and then I felt bad because I was mean to him. I was like, really? Really? So let's see, how's our time doing? What time am I supposed to be done?
5.
What's that, 5?
Yeah.
What is this, like 3 hours? I feel like I've been talking for 2 hours already. All right, let's talk a little bit about, I'm not actually going to, I don't know, here, look at my desktop or something. Something, wait. What are all those gestures I talked about? There we go, just so you have something to look at. So let's talk about how a podcast gets made. I'm a specialist in making an audio podcast, so I'm not even going to begin to try to describe what Don does with his show, because it's just a whole nother over. It really, really goes beyond it. So the first thing I like to tell people, if you're interested in doing a podcast, is find that thing that you're absolutely crazy passionate about. That thing you stop people in the grocery store online and say, hey, did you hear about the blah, blah, blah? You know, hey, I found this new knitting pattern. It's really, really good. Well, I went into podcasting because I was annoying people about gadgets and technology and software, and I thought, why not podcast to people who actually care? People who would maybe choose to listen to me, not be forced to. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still annoying people in the grocery store, but at least I could pretend. So I am getting to people who care what I have to talk about. So take that thing you're really passionate about. If you're not crazy, crazy passionate about it, you're going to pod fade almost immediately, and you're not going to keep doing it. So don't think, I talk to people who say, well, yeah, I'm going to do a podcast. What's it going to be about? Well, I don't know yet, but I'm going to do a podcast. Well, you're starting at the wrong end. The guy's going, what microphone should I get? He says, you don't need a mic. You don't know what you're going to talk about yet. The tools for doing a podcast can be as simple as the mic in your iPhone headphones plugged into your Mac. You're not going to have great quality, and you will eventually start buying more and more mics because it's really fun to have new mics and take it up a notch. But you can start as low end as that. There are headset mics you can get, which are a little bit better. You got to make sure they're USB mics. You can do that. I have one. I don't think I brought it with me. I call it the Bullet mic. It's from Samsung. It's a little cylindrical mic that sits on a stand, USB. It's pretty good. It's about $100. So from an entry standpoint, you can go as high end. You can get a high old PR40 and a big old mixer and all that stuff. But when you're first starting out, you want to find out whether you're really going to do it. So you got a mic. You got to wear headphones while you're doing the recording. If you don't wear headphones, you're going to get feedback. Because as you're working on it, you're going to get feedback through the system if you don't have something in that headphone jack. You don't actually have to listen to yourself. You can just set them aside, but you got to stop the internal mic from picking up your sound as you're talking into this other mic. So from a hardware standpoint, you could start as simple as that, and that's why I was saying, the headphone mics are it's bad, but it would get the point across. You could actually start that cheaply. Let's see, the next thing, in terms of software, I record using GarageBand. You can record using Audacity, which is a great open source application. Oh, I should tell you, I have a series on my website, if you're serious about this, called Podcasting on Podcasting. So if you go to podfeet.com, along the top there's a button that says Podcasting on Podcasting, and you can see the series, or you can subscribe to it in iTunes. It's 12 episodes long, and it walks through all of the details of what I'm going to talk about here. All right, so software. You can work with just GarageBand. GarageBand has built-in jingles, so you hear the jingles on my show, at least the beginning and end are just a standard that's built right into the app. And actually, I could do demo here. Why not? Completely unrehearsed. All right. It's going to yell at me about my microphone and that sort of thing. But what I wanted to show you one particular part. You remember I mentioned AAC files. So if I do a new project and I say I want to do a podcast, let's put this on the desktop and we'll call Delete Me. I always know what to delete. If I call stuff Delete Me, it's pretty obvious what it's going to be. So you'll notice in GarageBand there's a podcast track here, and this is, I guess I could be on the mic. Would that scare you guys if I start using the mic? There we go. So if you're going to do an AAC recording, you're going to need to use the podcast track. And this is where you actually add the album artwork. You add the artwork for each chapter that you're going to create. You can add URLs and spend 400 hours creating your podcast. In order to actually make this not an AAC file, not an enhanced podcast, you actually have to hide that or delete that track. Where'd it go? If you don't hide that track, it's not going to work. Let me show you. Let's see. Wait, where was it? Show podcast track. There it is. Command Shift B. So let's say I click on female voice, and let me just record. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Macintosh bias. Today is, I don't even know
Wednesday,
what time
November
it is. I don't know what
14th.
day. It might be 14th anyway. So you can see I just made that little recording. Let me get rid of this. So I've got the recording. I'm not going to play it back because I can tell that the audio is way peaking and looking bad there. But after you make your recording, you hit share, and you're going to say export. It says podcast. So we don't really, I don't want it to be an AAC file. I need it to be an AIFF file, which is an uncompressed file. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you that menu is going to change when I hide the podcast track. Now I say share, it simply exports song to disk. Now at this point you could compress it, but you really don't want to do it in here because it's not got a good compressor. So I'm going to hit export, and we will also call that delete me. All right, now when I go to the Finder, I go to my desktop. So I've got this file which is called deleteme.aif. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open that up in iTunes. So an AIF is, or AIFF, I'm not sure why, sometimes it has 3 letters, sometimes it has 4, same as JPEG and JPG, I don't know. Anybody know why they do it 3 letters and 4?
It's just the Windows standard to have the 3. But
Windows Standard has 3? Well, we use 3.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the AIFF is actually an uncompressed file, so it's huge. But that's good because that means it's full quality. So I'm going to open it up in iTunes. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan. Sorry.
Ouch.
Sorry. Just in case, let's keep that down in case I accidentally bump it again. Oh, that is another little ritual in our live chat room. Is I always have to tell Kevin to take his ears off. There's this one piece that if I hit the button wrong in GarageBand, it blares out the sound.
Just
so,
like that.
Just like that. Yeah. So you got a live demo of it. So somewhere in my music library, it is. What, this button is not. Yeah, I was afraid of that. The resolution on this screen really makes it hard to navigate. Let me get this around here, shrink this bad boy up. There we go. All right, so if I look for delete me, okay, there's the file. So let me bring this out a little bit. So you can see that, let's see, how big was it? Come on. It's not showing me. Oh, where is it? Size is showing, but it's way over here. There it is, 2.6 megabytes. I talked for like 15 seconds, right? It's huge. So what you're going to want to do is change that into an MP3 file. So if we go into iTunes, into Preferences, and I think it's right here. It's in the weirdest place. We need to set how it's going to encode this. We need to set the quality and the bit rate that you're going to want to deliver. So right here where it says when you insert a CD, believe it or not, it's the import settings is where they've hidden this. And again, this is all in that podcasting and podcasting, and it's all documented, so you don't have to memorize it. So import using, we want to convert this to an MP3, and I've got custom settings, so let's take a look at that. I do a podcast of only one person, so delivering this podcast as stereo would just be stupid. That would just make the file twice as big as it needed to fill up your iPod. So you have to set the stereo bit rate to double what you want the mono bit rate to be. So I set that to 128 because, again, it's spoken word, 64 kilobits per second is just fine. So I set it to mono, and I set it to 44.1 kilohertz, and then I save that. Now that you only have to do that once. That never comes up again once you have that set. Now, if you ever stick a CD in, you're going to be really mad because it's going to set it to 64 kilobits per second. It's going to sound horrible. So what I'm going to do now is I can right-click on this file, and I can say create an MP3 version. It's going to go really, really fast, and let's see how big that one is. It's 119 kilobytes. So you can see the size of it. My podcast comes in at about, I think it's 400 megabytes when I bring it in, and it's 35 megabytes when I distribute it. So that gives me a file that's actually a reasonable size. Now I'm going to do a get info on that, and there's a bunch of things you set in here. For example, on the info, I don't really want it, well, we'll call it delete me. Seriously, delete me. I put in my name, and of course I'm going to use text expander for this because everybody should. And let's see, this one I don't. Let's see. No, what is it? There you go. There we go. And then you can fill as much or as little of this in as you want. And you want to set this to podcast. Whoops, I didn't mean to finish that quickly. Next, under options, one of the best things you can do is have remember playback position selected. So the worst thing in the world is to be listening to a podcast and they go, okay, I'm tired of that, I want to listen to some music, and come back and it starts over. You'll just kill yourself for that, right? You also want to skip when shuffling, because the second worst thing in the world is somebody's, jogging to a great song, and then all of a sudden the next thing they get is me talking. It's not really what you want to have as a shuffle for songs. Finally, you can add album artwork, and we'll just, for completion, we'll go in here. Let's see, where is it? It's in Skyline Logos. I do this with a script normally. Oh, there's a good one. The album artwork size changed recently. They want 1200 by 1200 DPI, so I'm going to pick that one and drop that one in, and now we say OK. So now when I distribute that file, it's going to have all that information in it, anybody who takes a look at it. So the last thing I do is I do show in Finder, and there's the file. It's sitting in iTunes, but I'm going to drag it out to my desktop because I'm going to actually use it to send it up to a website. So that's how I create the audio file in the first place, while doing all those other juggling balls and juggling knives that I do. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to need to, you really need to have a blog if you're going to do a podcast. You would think that it's a podcast. Why do you have to have a blog? That doesn't make any sense. It's supposed to be a podcast. But if you don't have a blog, there's no way to get feedback from the people who are listening. So you're just spitting in the wind. You got nobody letting you know whether they care, they liked it, they hated it, they're asking you questions. You have no way to build the community of people who care. And a lot of this really does have to do with the community of the Uber fans that makes it more interesting to do. It'd be like, every week going to a conference room and talking and there's nobody in the room. You don't know if they're there or they're invisible. They're actually on, on GoToMeeting or something. You don't know whether they're liking it or not. So you can create a website using something like WordPress. You can do it at WordPress.com for free, or you can set up your own server. Some people, you can do it 100 different ways, but you really do need a website where you're going to be able to get that feedback. I put, like I said, pretty advanced show notes. You don't have to do that. Normal people don't. They just put up maybe the links or something like that of what they talk to. It all depends on what you want. Maybe you got a keynote file or a PowerPoint you were talking about that you really want people to see. You can have that up, linked up there on your website as well. All right. The next part, let's see, I found a screenshot. So now you've created this great podcast. You actually need to create the XML file that is your feed file. And let me do something to terrify you guys again, just because it's fun. All right, where is it? There we go. So this is all you have to do to create the file to make your podcast. It's a piece of cake. You're not going to have any trouble at all. Actually, when I first started podcasting, the way I did it, the way I figured out how to do it was I went to Leo's website and I downloaded his XML file, that's his RSS feed, and I started reading it, trying to understand. It turns out it's actually really, really easy. And I mean, you wouldn't have to recreate this syntax, and you definitely don't have to do it this way, but it's kind of fun to see how easy it is. So the channel has a title called NosillaCast Mac Podcast. So this is not the current episode. This is the top level information. Says it's called the NosillaCast Podcast. It's located at podfeed.com. This is the description. And then this GOP gets created by some other stuff, but I've got in here categories of iTunes categories. I have my show listed in technology and software, how-to, freeware, shareware, open source, and Macintosh. So I've got all these different categories to help you find the show. The image for the logo is right here. That's how iTunes knows to go get it. Remember how I showed you in Instacast it had the wrong logo? It can only have this logo. I don't know how it has the wrong logo because that logo doesn't exist in the information it gets. I don't know what one, oh, that must be the size of the icon. But let me jump down. If you keep scrolling through this, oh, these are the iTunes categories. You can have regular categories, but then iTunes came in and said, well, we have our own categories. So I've got those listed. It's listed in these 3 categories. One episode is from here to here. You see where it says item, and then it says /item? Within that, you have the title of the show, which is just that's what's on the top of every web page for me. That's the title of the show. You've got a link to where you put that audio file. So I didn't mention that. You have to put the audio file somewhere. You can either put it on your own website. You can host it with a service. I use Libsyn. I don't actually like them, but they're cheap. But you can put it up there, and then you pay a fee per month for how much data you put up there, not how many downloads. So, you know, if you're afraid you suddenly become internationally famous, you could lose a house payment if you're not careful. So I put it on that site. So this is just the long URL that goes to where that's hosted. Actually, no, I lied. That whole time I was just lying to you. That's actually the link to the blog episode. Yeah?
Allison, do you get the hits from that? Do they give you the access to the...
The question was, do I get the hits? Yeah, that is one advantage of a Libsyn kind of a arrangement. There's another one called Blueberry that's missing some of the vowels. I forget which vowels. Just start spelling it wrong, you'll find it. They're a lot better service. It's just, I've got 392 shows I'd have to move if I were to do it, so I have never done that. But if I were starting, I'd probably start with Blueberry. But yeah, that's one of the features is they do give you the stats to tell you how many downloads you have and that sort of thing. You can track it over time. I lied. This link is the link to the specific episode in my blog. So that's linking now the audio to the blog so you can get directly to it. This long thing from here to here is your choice of how much to write. That's the description of the episode. So remember when we were in Downcast and when we were in the My Podcast app, you could see the description of the show. That's where that's all typed in. So I'm long and verbose and write a bunch of junk there. Next up is the publication date and the enclosure file. There's where the audio file, you can see it's on Libsyn. That's the thing I was talking about. This was the hardest part for me when I was reading Leo's XML file, is it said length. Length, is that like in milliseconds? What? I sat there studying, trying to do the math, trying to figure out what it was. It's actually the number of bytes. So this is a 30 megabyte file. But it has to be exact. You can't, if you're off by one digit on that, it's not going to be right. But you're never going to have to do this anyway. You actually go in and tell it what kind of a file it is. I once did one video episode, and I did it while I was away out of town, and it wouldn't work, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong. It was video, it wasn't audio, so the feed just didn't know what to do because the attachment was the wrong file type. I don't know what this GUID thing is, but there's the iTunes author. One nice thing about podcasting I didn't mention is they have a thing called the explicit tag. So if you're going to be swearing and talking about naughty bits, you probably want to say, yeah, this is explicit. And it's self-policing, and it seems to work. People, if they're talking about naughty bits, they put explicit on it. If they're not, they put clean, and everybody's happy. And everybody gets to pick whatever they want. Remember, it's whatever you want. So mine is not naughty. Mine is nice. So that's actually kind of mean to show you that, but that's exactly how I learned how to do it. I use an application called Feeder. And Feeder allows me to create new episodes. So if this was the episode I did before I left, I put in the title, I put in the link to the website where the episode is, I put in my name, it figures out the publication date and time, it does all that by itself. This is where it is on Libsyn. If I pull down from here and I say fetch attributes from web, it goes out and figures out that it's audio MPEG and gives me the length automatically. And then this is where I type in my full description of the show. There's some settings in here where in iTunes podcasting, this is where I put in my keywords. I seem to be having a weird problem with the image, but the image is in the file and it works. This is where you put in the iTunes Store category, so it basically does all of the heavy lifting that you don't have to do with all those bits that I was showing you. So this is a great application, costs $30. Another option, if you don't want to spend that kind of money, is there's a plugin for WordPress. If you create a WordPress blog called PodPress, I think that's the new one, or else that's the old name and they changed it. Something like that. If you search for PodPress, you'll find the right one or the new one. Well, you find the right one either way, but it'll show you. But anyway, that's a way within the website to simply say, there's a podcast to this, and you enter some fields and it actually creates it for you automatically. I got used to using Feeder and I find it to be really, really useful. Yeah?
Have you ever thought about being part of one of the networks?
Have I thought about being part of one of the networks? You know, that's a really personal decision whether to do that. I know a lot of my friends have done that and have become part of networks, but you know, I have a day job where I work for the man, and I sort of want to work for myself. I want to be able to do whatever I want. The idea of being beholden to somebody else, you know, podcasting is all about the person receiving it, but it's also all about me. It's what I want to talk about. I mean, I wouldn't want somebody to say, well, you can't talk about Linux, it's a Mac podcast.
And what would be the advantage of being part of it?
I'm sorry, say again?
What is the why do people?
What's the advantage? I think you get bigger numbers, you get bigger downloads because you're part of a network that's doing more promotion for it. But one of the things I do when I advertise is I advertise for stuff I really, really believe in. You'll hear about screen steps in my making spectacular documentation bit, and every week I have a new story to tell you of how I actually use that software. I have trouble picturing myself sitting there saying, you know, you need to use this new eye cream. It makes your eyes look beautiful. You know, it's just not going to work for me. It's not my style. When I'm passionate about something, I can do a good job. If I'm not passionate, you will be able to tell. So I don't think that would work for me. But yeah, you can get better numbers, which means more advertising, which means more money. I don't do it for the money. I do it for the fun. It's okay if I make money, but it's not the main reason I'm doing it. That makes sense? Right, how's my time going? You've got to be kidding. I've only been talking an hour? Is that really? No, hour 10.
Hour 5.
Okay.
That's because you're at 2x.
I'm at 2x apparently. I keep thinking it's like tons of content. Like Don said, it was really hard to tell how much content these things were because they look like, you know, they say 3 minutes a chart. I got 30 charts, that's got to be 90 minutes. One of them came off in a half an hour. So it's a good thing came up with some other ideas here.
It's okay to end early.
Yeah, it's okay to end early since people are dropping off, so that's okay. So we've got the way to create the XML file. We've got the way to create the audio file. You push it up there. The last bit is, let's see, I took some notes here. The last thing you need to do is figure out how to register it in iTunes. Under Learn More, and again, this is probably going to change while we're gone. Everything I've showed you about how to work in iTunes could be completely different when we get off the boat. So this is where it was when I took these screenshots. Under Learn More, you go to Submit a Podcast, and this is where you put that feed URL, that big ugly one that I said Instacast kept showing. That's where you paste that in, and you hit Continue, and you answer a couple other questions, and then you wait for them to tell you, yeah, your podcast has been accepted. I don't know of any cases of podcasts not being accepted because, like I said, they cover the entire spectrum. So, question?
How long does it take to index?
How long does it take to index?
Yeah, so if you submit it and then I go looking for it.
If I submit it and you go looking for it, you know, I did it 7 years ago, so I have no idea whether it's quick or short now. It was like a day or something. I mean, it was hardly nothing. Now, this is creating the podcast in the first place. I only did this once. When I hit upload, I hit upload in Feeder, when I push this button that says publish, the minute it says it's done, you can download it. It's instantaneous. It's there immediately. Because I've already FTP'd the file up to the server, so it's been sitting there waiting. All it needs is this little itty bitty text file. These files, these RSS files are tiny. They're kilobytes in size. So all it needs to do is upload that new version, and now your iTunes would know where it was. So yeah, it's instant gratification from that end.
So the other step is more the application process for...
Yeah, this is really the application process to be allowed to have a podcast in iTunes. That's what I thought, but you're probably right. That's probably what he was asking. So once you've got that, you've been accepted, you can right-click on your logo, and I took the screenshot a long time ago, but you can copy the iTunes Store URL, and now you can put it on your website with your big subscribe button or your hidden subscribe button, depending on your mood, whether you really want people to subscribe. So that is, in a speed version, how I create my podcast. Now, Don, did you want to explain yours?
No, it's okay.
I've watched Don do his, and it's even worse. Any more questions on that? I know it's kind of overwhelming. If anybody is serious about doing it, I do recommend going through that podcasting on podcasting thing. But then I'm really committed to helping people get started if they want to do it, they're passionate, and don't just come to me saying, I want to buy a new mic. I really like to help people. So if you get interested in the topic, you can definitely contact me, Allison@podfeed.com, and we can have some fun.
I'm just curious about the audience relationship, because I thought that all those people who are chatting with you on your thing is your feedback. Why do you have to have a blog?
She was curious about why you have to have a blog if you're getting audience feedback from these people chatting with me. The people chatting with me are only the live listeners. They're like 0.5% of the listeners. There's a lot more people who don't listen live. I mean, it's an acquired taste going to the live chat room. But yeah, no, you definitely need the feedback. And not everybody does a live show. So if you don't do a live show, then you're not going to have any feedback at all. You're going to be, like I said, spitting in the wind. I mean, you
think that is the industry standard. People all have blogs.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's how you can also be found. If you just, if you search for Allison Sheridan, you're going to find podfeed.com on the web. That's how you can find my podcast. So yeah, definitely, you've got to have a web presence.
So Allison, you mentioned the different podcast apps, etc. And I know there are quite a few, but you weren't very happy with the ones that you suggested there. I use...
I was happy with Downcast. I love Downcast. Yeah, that one was good. What do you use?
iCatcher.
iCatcher?
Yeah.
Does that have my logo right?
I'm not online, so.
That's all I really care about, you know.
So that works really well.
Okay, Eye Catcher is another one.
Yeah.
You know who it's made by? No, okay.
EYE or
Joe is a
I?
nerd.
ICATCHER.
It's by a guy called Joe is a nerd.
It's by joeisanerd.com. Oh, yeah, you gotta love that. You want to throw that guy a couple bucks. Do you know if it costs money? Do you remember?
Don't remember.
Okay, cool. So it was EYE? No, it's just the letter I. The letter I, CHECHER from joeisanerd.com. Gotta love it. All right, well, thank you for coming. Thank you for staying through the gruesome part of this.